The Kentucky Derby, the biggest horse race of the year, is coming up in September. But if you knew racing is fraught with cheating, why would you as a bettor want to play that kind of game? The PETA lawsuit that sought justice for cheated gamblers. Next on the PETA Podcast. Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Guillermo, your host for this behind-the-scenes look at PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. On today's episode, a landmark settlement of a lawsuit backed by PETA that sought recourse for gamblers now puts horse racing at a crossroads. Clean up the use of drugs on horses, or see the public realize it's time to stop any support for a rigged game. The bettor in question, Jeffrey Tretter, based in Illinois, bet on a race in 2016 at the New Jersey Meadowlands racecourse through an electronic gambling site. Tretter's horse didn't win, but the horse that did was later revealed in an investigation to have been given illegal drugs by trainer Robert Bresnahan. Tretter sued Bresnahan and owner J.L. Sadowski, charging alleged violations of the RICO Act because it involved interstate commerce. After 2 years, the trainer and owner settled for $20,000 in the first time a horse player challenged a race in which he had been cheated. The lawsuit exposed how drugs make horse racing a rigged and dirty sport. PETA's Kathy Guillermo talks about what the case could mean for the sport of kings on the PETA Podcast. Tell me more about Jeff Tretter. He's just an average guy who's in Illinois. He bets on the races. He was in Illinois betting on a race in New Jersey, and he happened to bet on a race where a horse who was drugged won, and it wasn't the horse that he bet on. So how does he have recourse at all?
Well, he bet on a horse who was what they call a long shot in racing parlance. He had not won in some time, and he was not expected to win. But he didn't just happen to make this bet. He had very carefully looked at the horses who were running, or in this case, trotting, because this is harness racing. And he had decided who would come in first, second, and third. He placed a bet on those three horses and was shocked when this long shot horse called Tag Up and Go won the race. And he couldn't figure it out until a few months later when he learned that that horse had tested positive for an illegal substance.
And did that illegal substance make the difference in this horse Tag Up and Go winning? And how was it revealed that the horse was under this drug?
Well, fortunately, there are some people in the racing world who are trying to clean it up. And one of those is the owner of the track where Tag Up and Go ran. The owner is named Jeff Gural. The track is the Meadowlands track in New Jersey. And Mr. Gural has worked very hard over the last several years to test horses and to make sure that nobody is illegally drugging them. And when they do, when he finds a positive test, he kicks them off his tracks, which as the owner of the tracks, he can do.
And so when Tretter finds out after the fact, when this investigation hits, he's upset. But normally when it's disclosed that a horse who was drugged won, is there any recourse for a bettor?
No, not usually until now. And that's the interesting point. For some years, we at PETA had thought that doping horses, it's not only terribly cruel to the horses, but it's unfair to the bettors because it amounts to cheating. And because the bets were done across the state line, if they are, as they usually are when people bet on their own computers or on their phones, then it's also fraud and racketeering. So for many years, we had thought if we had a bettor who could prove that he had placed a bet on a horse who was then doped, and that horse won or in some way changed the race results, then he would have a very good lawsuit. And for the first time in history, we could show trainers that when they dope the horses, they can be sued and they can lose a lot of money, which is exactly what happened in this case.
Now, the trainer in this case, a man by the name of Robert Bresnahan, the owner of the horse, this Tag Up and Go, J.L. Sadowski, they're the two people named in the suits. Were they implicated previously in any kind of wrongdoing in racing, or is this a first-time type of offense for these guys?
It was not the first time for the trainer Bresnahan. He has a number of violations for illegal substances or excess amounts of legal substances in his horses. So in that way, it wasn't really surprising. But if I could just go back for a minute and explain a little bit more about how this came about, when Jeff Tretter, the bettor, found that the horse Tag Up and Go had tested positive for EPO, he came to PETA and he said, "Hey, look, I think this is a lawsuit. I think I could sue these people because the horses that I had placed first, second, and third came in second, third, and fourth. And the horse who probably shouldn't have won did win. There's something off here. And look, this horse was drugged." And it was at that point in 2018 that we backed this lawsuit. Mr. Tretter's attorneys in New Jersey filed the suit. And it's taken a long time to get to the settlement, mostly because Mr. Bresnahan and Mr. Sadowski were obstructive to justice, but we're there now, and we've set a new precedent here.
So it's an actually a settlement. The $20,000 settlement was awarded to Tretter. What does the impact of that settlement mean? He gets the money. It's a little bit lower than what he might have won if the drugged horse didn't win. But what is the effect of his winning a settlement? It's not, he didn't win it outright. There's a settlement. Is there a difference, or does it have the effect of the same thing, that it should make people worry that bettors could have recourse and sue a trainer who cheats or owner who cheats and gives drugs to his or her horses?
Every bettor should hold on to their tickets. And fortunately, since so much gambling is done online now, someone else is actually keeping track of what your bets are, and you can go back and access that data. But every trainer should also be worried. And as it turned out, Mr. Tretter won or settled for an amount of money that was approximately triple what he would have won had the bet gone the way he thought it would. He originally thought he should have won $31,000 on this trifecta bet that he placed. It turns out when the information was collected in discovery during the lawsuit that there were several other people who also had winning tickets. So I hope they're listening, and I hope they come forward, and I hope they file their lawsuits. But it means that what Mr. Tretter actually would have won was around $6,000. So a settlement for $20,000 is quite substantial. And Mr. Tretter also mandated as part of the settlement that $7,500 go to a horse rescue because, of course, the horses are the real victims here.
I guess that's the next question. PETA fought this or helped fund this lawsuit for a couple of years. It gets a result, this settlement. Is this a kind of case that's enough to hasten the decline of racing?
This is the kind of lawsuit that has the potential to spare horses a good deal of suffering. Because if a trainer is considering injecting an illegal substance into a horse in the hope that that's going to help him win, then he's going to have to think about, well, I might win X amount of money, but then when I'm sued, I might lose triple that or quadruple that. The way this suit worked out, they did come to a settlement agreement, and Mr. Bresnahan, the trainer, and his attorney, and the owner of the horse, Mr. Sadowski, decided, I think, that to come to a settlement when they realized that it was not going their way, and that if it went to court, they were liable for triple that amount of money.
And you really think that this is the kind of case that would make trainers and owners think twice before they commit an act of drugging a horse before a race?
There are always going to be bad trainers who do bad and illegal things. Well, I hope there aren't always going to be people who do that, but there are people who aren't going to pay attention to this because they're just not good people. And those people need to be kicked out entirely. And that's why we have advocated that any trainer should only be allowed to have a certain number of violations, and then he should be banned from horse racing forever. But I do think that there are a lot of trainers who are paying very close attention. And if the headlines in the racing publications are any indication, a lot of people in racing are paying attention to this.
Well, tell me about the view around the racing industry. What is the scuttlebutt, or what is the word around the racing industry? Are they scared that this could have an impact on bettors who might suspect cheating is going on?
There are some people who are concerned that this could become a litigious arena. And I think that that's already going to happen. We saw that when the Triple Crown winner Justify, when it was revealed in the New York Times that Justify had actually tested positive for an illegal substance during the Santa Anita Derby. And if that had been revealed, it would have meant that he could not have run in the Kentucky Derby and would not have run the Triple Crown or won the Triple Crown races. There was a lawsuit filed by the owner of the horse who came in second. So people in racing are looking at lawsuits, and they are looking at the possibility of it. And when it's found that a horse has been doped, the winnings, what's called the purse, is often redistributed to the owners of the horses who should have won. But the bettors are ignored. And it is the billions of dollars of the people like Jeff Tretter who make this industry run when you come right down to it. And so they have every right to cry fraud and foul and to have some redress for this.
Well, it's funny that in all the years that I followed racing, that very little attention has been placed on the people who are the backbone of the game, which is the little guy bettor. I mean, some people call it the sport of kings, and that usually refers to the owners. And if you sit in the turf club of a horse race operation, you know, they sit in a nice little setup, and they place large bets themselves. So I guess when they call it the sport of kings, they are the kings. But there are all those people in the grandstands, and in the Kentucky, I hear the dog, but that's all right. The dog's fine. But you know, the little bettor really does run things. If the little bettor went away, this would just be a vanity sport for those so-called kings. This lawsuit, as far as I can tell, it shows that racing is bad for animals, but it's also bad for humans, because if you want to play this game, you're playing a bad game and you'll get cheated.
I think that's true. Unfortunately for the horses, if you want to call it a sport, you have to call it a sport of drugs and death, because that's what we have seen since I've been involved in 2008 in this. And every day on a racetrack, more than 3 horses break bones and die. There's so much wrong with racing, and yet so much of it could be easily fixed. And a lot of the fixing of it comes with, don't give the horses drugs, don't cast them off when you're done with them. Take every precaution that you possibly can to protect them. And that would go a long way toward preventing the suffering.
You know, it seems to me that if you convince people that this is a rigged game, that you will be cheated, and that it's not a fair game, that it should just go away. The popularity of the game should dwindle, and it should die a natural death, this game of horse racing. But that hasn't exactly happened, right? I mean, what do you think?
I think it is happening. I think people in racing are very worried because racetracks are closing. People are turning away from it and have been for the last decade. The amount of money bet on horses has gone down substantially. And last year, after all the deaths of horses in California, more and more people began to question why it's even allowed. The Washington Post ran an editorial stating that horse racing is past its time and should be ended. And I think we'll continue to see it decline. What we're trying to do with these lawsuits and with our exposés and with our efforts to, for example, get rid of the gambling subsidies in New York State that keep it propped up, what we're trying to do is end a little bit of the suffering.
Now, you talked earlier about animal abuse, the much publicized deaths at the Southern California racetracks last year. They continued on into 2020. Has that ever been solved? Is the tallying of the deaths still taking place, and are horses still dying on Southern California racetracks, most notably Santa Anita?
Well, Santa Anita is not racing right now. The deaths at Santa Anita were cut in half with the changes that they've made. It's still not enough. There needs to be more done to protect the horses. In my opinion, at this point, we need to get rid of those trainers who are the so-called bad players in the game. They just need to go. We are in the racing season at Del Mar right now. There have been no deaths at Del Mar yet. But, it's kind of a waiting game because everybody knows horses are going to die. And unless they can get that death rate to zero, why should this even be allowed?
Well, it does raise the question, if it's a sport, name one other sport where a major participant dies and there isn't a major investigation, or there isn't a stoppage or, some kind of question about why something happened. But until last year, really, a horse died and they covered it up in the racing press. I mean, they didn't really expose it as much. And even when a high profile horse in a high profile race like Barbaro, when Barbaro died or when Eight Bells died, it would get a headline, but it didn't change anything. But I suppose when you saw upwards of 36 horses die in Southern California last year, I think people started wondering, and it sort of brought racing out from under, it was sort of like under the radar for so long. And now people are looking at it and paying attention. How much longer can racing hang in there and without, buckling, totally?
Well, this is what I would say. I think anybody who's listening to this podcast should go to PETA.org. They should look at our horse racing investigations. We've done 8 undercover investigations. We've revealed parts of the horse racing industry that are shocking, horrifying. Horses from American racetracks going to slaughter in other countries, horses being shipped to Canada to slaughter after 36 hours on a truck, horses used in terrible ways when their bones are not even mature, and breaking down and dying on tracks in auctions before they've ever been in a race. And when you look at that, you have to wonder exactly what you said. How long can this last? And what we're telling everybody to do now is to take whatever action they can to make a difference here. They can send an email to their legislators to pass the federal law that would prohibit many of the drugs used in racing. Most important, they need to stay away from racetracks. They need to not bet on racetracks. We were happy to be involved in this lawsuit with Mr. Tretter, but generally speaking, we tell people don't bet because you're keeping racing alive.
So does it make a difference if it's a standardbred or a thoroughbred, or is a horse is a horse?
The bet that Mr. Tretter made was on a harness racing horse. And there's less harness racing than there is thoroughbred racing. The horses in harness racing are called standardbreds. But no, when it comes to horse racing, it's the same world. It's the same world of over racing, too much drugging, not enough attention paid to what happens to the horses during their lives when they get claimed and sent from one owner to one track to another track. And ultimately, when they go to slaughter, it amounts all to the same kind of cruelty and abuse.
So I just realized I was singing part of the refrain from the Mr. Ed show theme. A horse is a horse, of course, of course.
If they could talk, they would have something to say about the kind of drugs and the kind of treatment they've had.
Tell me about the drug that was used on the horse. It was called EPO?
EPO, it's called erythropoietin, and it increases the production of red blood cells in the horse. And the idea is that these red blood cells then deliver oxygen to the horse so that the horse has a greater lung capacity and can run much faster, more oxygenation of the horse's muscles. It's strictly illegal, certainly illegal in New Jersey where this horse was racing. And the odd thing about this is that this drug is actually kind of difficult to detect because it's only in the system for a certain period of time. And then it disappears from detection, but it can still be felt by the horse. The horse still feels the effects of it for a long time after. So it was fortunate for us that the test was done just at the right moment. And that's because, like some tracks, the Meadowlands and the owner of Meadowlands, Jeff Garral, does what they call out of competition testing. which means he has the right to go to the stables or the barns of these horses without notice and take a blood test.
But that's not happening in every track, right?
It's certainly not happening in every track, and it needs to happen much more in the tracks where it does take place.
And so this drug did something with the blood, oxygenated the blood. I guess it made the horse run faster.
It seems to have been that. It's certainly what we would call fixed the race. It was cheating. And because there's interstate gambling, in my opinion, it was racketeering. And that was the allegation of the lawsuit. So it was not only a crime against this horse, but a federal racketeering charge was the allegation that Mr. Tretter made as well.
Now, whenever you hear RICO laws, that's a pretty heavy federal, crime. It doesn't appear that, that would be that high up on the food chain of laws. But I guess when you're dealing with interstate commerce, it is. This is a serious thing.
Gambling is an enormous business in this country. And even as we've seen what they call the betting handle, the total amount of money bet on horse races, even as we've seen that go steadily down over the last decade, we're still talking $12 to $15 billion a year. And a lot of that is made possible by online gambling, by being at your computer or on your phone or in one track in one state, looking at a race in another state and making your bet there.
And that was what Tretter was doing. He was in Illinois betting on a race in New Jersey. If a bettor finds out that a horse is drugged, say, are there other Jeff Tretters out there who could bring a suit against a trainer and an owner?
There are probably hundreds of bettors who could do that. And because they now have, if they made their bets over the computer, they now have the backup information to prove that they did it. They can certainly make an allegation. Not long ago, Bob Baffert had 2 positives of an amount of drug in his 2 horses system at Oaklawn track. And he was disqualified from those horses' wins in that race. If I were a bettor and I had been watching that race and I had placed a bet on a horse in that race and I saw that it was effectively fixed because the horses who won had an illegal substance in their systems, I would be looking at a lawsuit.
Tell me, Kathy, is this the kind of thing that could hurt racing or help it get better if trainers and owners are smart and say, well, we better fix things. We better self-police. What do you think could happen here?
I think it's some of both. We know that there is a lot of attention being focused on racing right now for illegal drugging. Just a couple of months ago, the Justice Department indicted 27 people in racing, many of them on the East Coast, a lot of them in New York State, for their illegal drugging of horses in really shocking ways. And this, ultimately, our concern is for the horses and what this means for them and how it affects them. But it certainly shows that this so-called sport is rotten from within.
But it also says that if a horse needs to be drugged in order to run, maybe the horse shouldn't run, right? Should just be spared the activity and put to pasture or to cease racing, right?
There are a couple of different kinds of drugging that we're talking about. What you're mentioning here is certainly true. We see trainers and veterinarians use a whole bunch of different legal medications in order to keep a horse running when he's injured, for example. But the kind of drugging that we're talking about in this lawsuit and that was involved in the 27 indictments is illegal substances. These are prohibited substances that are never allowed under any circumstances. And for this reason, they're illegal at all times. And that's not so much to keep an injured horse running as it is to try to give a horse an advantage so that horse will win.
Boy, because sometimes you'll hear people use that excuse for the drugs that are sometimes legal, the horse needs this and it's seen as therapeutic. But that's something a distinction that's worth making, that this is a drug that is never allowed, or it's on a list. And how long is that list of drugs that are, should never be allowed on at a race course?
That list is long and still growing. We've seen everything from frog venom to a drug that's given to humans with osteoporosis being used, and anything that might give an advantage that is not yet illegal, we've seen trainers try. And then the horse racing commissions in the different horse racing states have to try to catch up, make that substance illegal, ban that substance. And we've heard from people inside racing that the trainers and the crooked people in racing are always trying to stay one step ahead of what's legal and what's illegal.
But this list, or this EPO, right, is the name of this drug. This drug, right. There is no excuse for it. No, it's very dangerous. I mean, one of the things that it does is thicken the blood. And to counteract the thickening of the blood, we are told by some veterinarians in racing, trainers will give horses something like warfarin, which thins the blood. So they give them something to give them oxygenation that harms the horse by thickening the blood, and then they give them a blood thinner, which is dangerous and can kill the horse. And what nobody who's involved in doping of horses is thinking about is the welfare of the horse. That's one thing for sure. So tell me about the Kentucky Derby. It's coming up. Does this lawsuit, do you think it might have some kind of impact on what happens at the Derby in terms of betting handle, in terms of interest, in terms of bettors being more aware about drugs in horse racing?
I think people are going to be paying very close attention, and some of the racing columnists have already started talking about that, especially in light of last year's Kentucky Derby, when the horse who won was actually disqualified, not for drugs this time, but for the way the race was run. And so people are paying very close attention. It's been kind of I hate to use one animal term to describe another, but it's been kind of a circus in racing lately, because things are changing on a daily basis. The racing industry has been under such scrutiny that some states are actively working to pass the regulations that have been passed in California, that PETA advocated for to protect the horses. And so things are changing all the time. But I know for certain that people are going to be looking at who wins the Kentucky Derby, which is in September this year, and they're going to be paying attention, and they're going to be thinking about it if it turns out later that a horse was drugged.
Will they be testing, or would they test routinely, or is it only test under if there was a real suspicion?
In the Kentucky Derby, they do test the horses. And it's a good point that you bring up, though, because testing is not equal in every racing state. There are about 38 racing jurisdictions in North America, and they all have different rules about how testing is done and when it's done. But there's a lot of scrutiny on the Kentucky Derby, so they will be pretty careful.
Kathy Guillermo, PETA Senior VP, is in charge of horse racing issues at PETA. For more information, go to PETA.org. And as a point of disclosure, Kathy is my spouse. And that's our show this time out. Contact us at PETA.org. You can find me on Twitter at Emil Amok, that's EMILAMOK, or on AMOK.com. Or you can read my work at aaldef.org/blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund blog. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on Apple Podcasts where you can rate and review the show. It helps get the word out about the issues you care about. Oh, just go ahead and listen wherever you get your podcast, whatever your favorite podcast source is. And don't forget, you can help the animals and PETA, especially if you have Amazon's Alexa. Just say, Alexa, donate to PETA. Our music is provided by Carbon Works. Check them out on YouTube. And join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.